we go. Hello, everybody. We're just getting things set up here, and then we'll be beginning our show. So please be patient. We are just setting things up. We have not started yet, and so just be patient, folks. Okay. Okay. All right. Got YouTube going. Here we go. Just sharing the links, folks. We are here. I'm gonna share this link.
Okay, I got mine shared.
Okay. Okay. If you don't hear anything, folks, we are still live, just sharing the links, getting things all set up for the show. Yeah. Come on in. Yeah. See if Facebook shares it. It did. Good. Okay. Okay. I believe that's it. Okay. Okay. There we go. So if you haven't been paying attention to the news lately, we will tell you about everything that we know from the news being shared out of Armenia and hearsay news from Azerbaijan. It's a very confusing thing over there. So just gonna wait for you to pile in. Thank you for coming in. All right, thank you. Hop into the chat. Please come in and we'll talk about today's show.
Do your intro, AJ.
Okay. Welcome to Order Militarist Radio TV. We here are lifelong Catholics, and what we do here is all for free and love of Jesus Christ, the Most Holy Trinity, and His Holy Church. and will defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Our work is the true sense of apostolate. Any funds raised goes back into this work for equipment. This helps us to give you an unbiased, hard-hitting truth that is not controlled by political correctness or interest groups. And today is our weekly program on terrorism, and no bigger news topic on terrorism is what's happening to Armenia and the little republic of Artsakh. Recent reports from last night are that Azerbaijan and Turkey have been shelling a school in, let's get this right, Stefan Kirk in Artsakh. So schools and nurseries are now being shelled and bombed by Azerbaijan and Turkish drones. And that was this morning before Twitter started to hide all the news, like they've been doing. Now, last night before going to bed, I was just trying to keep up with the news and get things all lined out for what we're going to be talking about here today, folks. That Azerbaijan is dropping cluster munitions, or what we call cluster bombs. In most countries, that is outlawed or prohibited. But it's not prohibited, I believe, in Azerbaijan or Armenia, because they were not on the list. But still, they're not dropping it on military targets, the actual bombs or munitions. They're dropping it on civilians in cities. And Turkey's flying their drones into Armenian Christian soldier locations, trucks, tanks, equipment stashes. And there's just a lot of misinformation out there about, did Armenia strike a suburb near Baku, or did they hit this one town? And where it had a thermal plant, and Armenia saying we did not launch our long-range ballistic missiles to hit this suburb or blow up this thermal plant or anything. And Azerbaijan saying yes you did, and Armenia saying no they didn't. And so either Armenia is not doing it, or someone else is doing it and making it look like Armenia has done it. What's your thoughts, Brother Alexis?
Well, there seem to be some reports that the Armenians were targeting military installations and depots in nearby cities. So it is possible that they did bombard Ganga, but that they weren't targeting the geothermal plant there or the natural gas or oil pipeline. And this thing is both sides are making claims and counterclaims. Armenia keeps saying that they're repelling the attacks, but maps are coming out showing Azerbaijani gains, which is to be expected since there's some territories which would be easily taken back and hard to defend, like the open country in the southeast. So it's hard to sort out what one side is saying on the other side. Unfortunately, the Azerbaijanis aren't really putting out much news in English to find out what's really going on. And the little that is coming through is poor quality
Yeah.
sources, or just a few Turks who know some English and are tweeting out mostly propaganda rather than trying to be informative. Blood is hot over there right now, so it's they don't have the culture in the Turkish or the Islamic world the way we have in the West of trying to be impartial.
Yeah.
So I think that's about it.
And there was a tweet yesterday saying Russia will be getting involved, but there was no further up tweets until this morning at 6 o'clock, about 6. Yeah, 3 a.m. I believe 3 a.m. my time, and it was about ready, and the plane was about to depart. So, and it was the presidential plane of Russia that landed in Armenia. There is no information on who was on board, what was on board, and no information about the meeting. But the presidential plane arrived and flew into the capital of Armenia for a 3-hour visit. And then I believe went back to Moscow. We have no further information on that, but they do have a military base there, the 102nd. It has a good number of troops there, good number of hardware. The brand new MiG jets, better quality than what the Armenian Air Force uses. So, but any actual sign that they're getting involved? No, there's not, except the two MiGs that went for a little flyby to protect the capital where the base is located. So if Russia gets involved, it could get even more ugly. Yeah. What would you say to that?
I think this is the very delicate balancing line that balancing cord they're working on. As we saw in the conflict that erupted in the Ukraine some years ago, where Russia wanted to take some or all of Ukraine, the West pretty much stayed out of it. They knew that if they came directly and immediately to the defense of Ukraine, even though they were bound, U.S. and Great Britain were bound by treaty to that, and started supplying massive amounts of military ordnance, the thing could escalate very quickly, and Russia, having her honor hurt, might well escalate to a major conflict, and they did not want that, even though Ukraine is not part of NATO. And I think now we're in the reverse situation. I think Azerbaijan and Turkey clearly did this with the permission and planning of the Pentagon. I think this is a tit for tat for the Ukraine, and I think it's part of the major strategy of the Pentagon to attempt to detach republics from Russia, because Russia has its main allies on the Western Front are Belarus and Armenia. And right now, Western subversives are trying to start a revolution in Belarus, and Armenia and Turkey are attacking. Azerbaijan and Turkey are attacking Armenia. So it seems to be a two-pronged thing to attack, timed precisely because Russia doesn't have sufficient forces to handle both at the same time. And they're both at a distance from one another, so it's not like Russia could rapidly move from one to the other. So I think they're playing chess with Putin from that point of view, but they're playing it with the lives of with a lot of innocent people. I don't think there's much chance that Lukashenko will be overthrown in Belarus. There's a lot of, obviously, dissatisfaction with his long rule as an Iron Man, but he's generally loved by his people. And as Armenia, there's no chance, I think, of detaching Armenia from Russia, but causing them to lose face, at least, would be, I think, a geopolitical goal that what the Pentagon is working for here. So the Guardian piece that said that the West isn't interested in this conflict, I think it's just completely a CIA puff piece put out there to cover what's really going on. Israel would never have been able to sell drone technology to Azerbaijan without Pentagon's approval. And I think Trump is totally behind Azerbaijan, even though he might be pretending otherwise. I know it might sound very sad for the Armenians to think that the US is actually playing a role against them, but they have to understand that the US government doesn't represent the people. It represents the Masonic Lodge, and its affairs overseas have always been against Christians. They're going to find much better support in independent Christian organizations like our own around the world that are interested in defending Christians, or Russia itself and the other allies of Russia that will willing to come their aid. Armenia is in a tough spot because Russia sells military equipment to both sides in the conflict. And I can't see Russia wanting to stop selling to Azerbaijan, which has like 10 times the size of the budget than Armenia. And but Russia could gain something out of this, because if Armenia holds fast and Azerbaijan doesn't make any gains, the egg will be on the faces of Azerbaijan, Turkey, the United States, and the West for starting something they couldn't finish. And it is really a bad conflict from the point of view of moral support. I don't think anyone's going to take Azerbaijan's role in this, because there was 25 years of peace here. After 20 years, the land becomes the property of the people living on it. That's general concept of law in the West. And Armenia is a Western nation. It's not a Mideastern nation. So if the Turks and if the Azeris don't understand that, well, sorry, that's just the way it is. So I don't see how Azerbaijan can really gain from this. If Azerbaijan starts fighting a nasty war, Russia could intervene with Armenia, and that might trigger Turkish and more Turkish involvement. And I don't think anyone wants that, because Turkey's a NATO nation. It could trigger a whole bunch of things, unless NATO decides just to cut Turkey loose and throw her to the dogs. And then Russia would have a free hand there, and then they could do a lot of things. I think the Russians really could put an end to this right away, because they border Azerbaijan on the north, and their ally Iran borders on the south. And if both of them decide to annex Azerbaijan, there's nothing the West could do about it. And they'd both gain a good share of one of the richest oil deposits in the whole Caspian Basin and all of Central Asia. So they have everything to gain from Azerbaijan going overboard on this. And if Azerbaijan doesn't go overboard and practices strong self-restraint, which it does not seem they're doing since they're bombing civilian centers, then Armenia and its allies are going to win this. So I don't see how Turkey's going to gain anything from this. I think they're trying to work for get a corridor along the Iranian border so they can have gas and oil pipelines from Azerbaijan to Turkey. I think that's what Turkey really wants out of it. But I don't see how they're going to win on this. The Armenians will fight to the last man. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was also reports yesterday that Iran has sent in some artillery pieces and tanks against, well, they didn't really say which way, but since they were being shelled against by Azerbaijan, with few of their houses being destroyed, I would probably assume they were sending their equipment against Azerbaijan to protect their borders,
Well, to a certain extent, Iran has to do a show of force that they're going to guard their borders. They don't want it to come across. The other thing is, I think the Iranian regime is extremely upset that Turkey has imported up to maybe 3,000 Syrian terrorists to Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has a history of supporting terrorism in Chechnya, and Russia is sensitive about that. But the Syrian terrorists would be Sunni, and the Iranian people and regime are Shia, and they don't get along at all. And Iran is very sensitive about being surrounded geopolitically. She doesn't want enemies on her borders. The Iranian regime was really concerned about American and Western NATO presence in Afghanistan, and to a large extent, I think, wrested from the NATO allies not to be engaged in activities along the Iranian border. While all the other times supporting or at least giving refuge to various terrorist groups in their own country. But I think they're trying to show to the Azerbaijanis, don't try it, we're going to guard our border. But as far as what I see in the reports, it's only a token force, a shell. It's not like they moved up. They had moved up maybe 3 infantry battalions. Well, that'd be another thing, but it was a few artillery pieces and a few tanks, I think. Just, I think that's just token. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But I think the Iranians are very concerned. And I think Turkey, by moving terrorists into Azerbaijan, has cemented even more strongly the alliance between Russia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Iran, a de facto alliance, even though Armenia only has an alliance with Russia, and Russia has an alliance with Iran.
Yeah. This was just tweeted out from the Ministry of Defense of Armenia. The Minister of Defense, David Tonyar, received the U.S. Ambassador of Armenia, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to Armenia, Lynn Tracy. The Ministry of Defense presented the current process of military actions, emphasized Turkey's unprecedented direct involvement and support to Azerbaijan, but of course, the U.S. ambassador did not say anything.
Yeah, they know Turkey's involved, and they know why they're involved. They were told to be involved. But Turkey would never have done this without the okay from Washington. I think that's pretty obvious. Just like they would never have entered Syria without the okay of Israel and Turkey and the United States. So directly what Turkey's going to gain from this or not, I don't think anything direct, but I guess they're hoping if Russia and Iran stayed out of it and the West stayed out of it, they could take some territory of Armenia. It's really not a good front for them, though. There's so many mountains in that region. It would be a very difficult battle. But the Turks have been shooting across that border ever since '92. Armenians have told me that a couple people get shot at every year, and some years a few people actually get killed on the Turkish border. So it's not a friendly relationship. And I think Turkey's border has been closed since '94. I think in 2006 they wanted to reopen it, but Azerbaijan complained. So I don't know if it's still open or what. I imagine now it's not as much as before. So
yeah. Yeah, the ambassador on their own Twitter account hasn't said anything, but the OSCE, the Minsk group have come out and said they urge a ceasefire and condemn what Azerbaijan's doing. So
yeah, the firing of these cluster bombs in civilian areas is definitely, I think it's classified as a war crime. And it seems a pretty darn desperate attempt. There's really no military value of firing cluster bombs into residential neighborhoods other than to terrorize the population and force them to flee. And maybe Azerbaijan wants to be able to, when they do, if they move the front line to the cities of Stepanakert and the other ones where they're shelling, as to find cities that don't have civilian population, so they could fight more freely. But I think it's
and yeah, we are still live, folks, and we are still recording. Don't worry about it. It's just our censor. All right, he's back.
Oh, so as I censored, okay.
Yep.
So what was the last thing you heard me say?
There's no actual point of using cluster bombs, especially
Oh, yeah.
on civilians, because, well, that constitutes a war
Yeah.
crime.
Yeah, okay, they got upset at that. So yeah, there's no military advantage either, because cluster bombs really only work well in the open battlefield against infantry units that are massed together. So using them in civilian areas is mostly a weapon of terror. They're trying to drive out the population, the civilian population, so that when the front line gets to Kirk, if ever, they can fight a more direct open war. So the general tactics in war of Islamic countries are drive the civilians away from the Christian lines and attack the Christians directly. But on their own lines, hide your forces among your own people, so that when the enemy shoots at you, you can claim the enemy is killing civilians. So really, they've always done this. They're just completely immoral and dishonest military tactic. Not all Islamic countries do this, but the most rogue ones. And Azerbaijan's known to have a really dishonest dictatorship that's ruled the country for 30 years, and even many Azerbaijanis can't take it.
Yeah. Let's see here. Trying to find the tweet that I'm sharing. I think it was from the UN. Yeah, I was from, I believe it was from the UN, where I actually condemned the Azerbaijan for doing exactly that for and said what they are doing, what the dictator of Azerbaijan is doing is actual war crime and should be punished as such. So I was like, the UN said that? Do they have a cold?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Normally they'll say something that is, non-plus. Like I think NATO came out and strongly condemned the violence and the escalation of violence and urged a ceasefire. But the thing is that the Armenians want a ceasefire. It's the Azerbaijanis that don't want one. And or at least the Armenians will accept one if the Azerbaijanis will. But I don't think Azerbaijanis want a ceasefire now. That would mean defeat for them and loss of face. And they've already invested probably hundreds of $millions in military hardware, and they haven't much to show for it. So I think they're trying to do a de facto take back here and occupy and change the line of separating the two countries. A couple kilometers at least to show they have some sort of victory. But as we said before in a previous show, this is not the richest land. It's basically just pasture land. There's nothing of local value really worth making it taking. It's mostly the position of Artsakh in the relationship between Azerbaijan and Turkey. They take Artsakh, it's just a tiny little corridor if they take from Armenia, and they have a route all the way to Turkey.
Then after the condemnation by the Minsk group, the UN Security Council, NATO, European Union, they also are asking for recognition of the independence of the Republic of Artsakh. So that would be formally recognized internationally, and then things will change.
Yeah, we have to distinguish now. So Armenia is the country. The little breakaway region from Azerbaijan is called Artsakh, and that area geographically is called Nagorno-Karabakh. The Republic of Artsakh is the Armenian ethnic state that governs it, and we're talking about a tiny little area. I think it's smaller than Rhode Island. I can't quite be sure. I haven't measured it. So a very small area with very few people. I think it has 160,000 people in it. So it's not much bigger than a mountain valley. And although it has like 300 Armenian churches in it, well, the Armenians are very religious people. So yeah, there's not much to gain there. Are you getting some comments there, AJ, you want to apply to?
I believe we have a Turk in the chat. spot. Actually, Armenia is the occupier and aggressor here. Wrong.
Well, seeing that Azerbaijan began the war last week, that's simply a false statement. There's been no major hostilities between the two powers since '94. So, and second of all, Armenia doesn't occupy Artsakh. Artsakh is an independent republic, and it's a general principle international law that people can. I think it's in the International Human Rights Declaration of the UN that people can decide their own sovereignty based on votes and their own independence. And the Azerbaijanis have to realize that they don't have right to the territory of Artsakh. It's inhabited by Armenians, and Armenians voted that way. The minority of Turks that were in the area, I believe, have already left, and so our Azeris in the area have already left. And then the bigger question is: does all this land belong to Armenia thousands of years ago? It's the Turks and Azeris who are the occupying powers, and if they want the principle of leave occupied territories, then they both have to return to Central Asia and give all the land in this area back to Armenia. So, let's not get ridiculous and make false statements. You just get people more able to reconcile over the truth. The truth is that Azerbaijan began the conflict in violation of international law.
Yep. And thank you, Juan, for coming in for our defense and Armenia's defense from Twitter. So, yeah. Let's see here. And this is from yesterday on how Azerbaijan invited Turkey, and Turkey brought in sponsored terrorists from Syria. So it's been proven, even in Britain-based news, that Turkey has brought in Syrian fighters to attack Azerbaijan.
Yeah. So if not to attack attack Artsakh.
Oh yeah.
So if Azerbaijan is fighting a just war, why did they just allow Turkey to bring 3,000 terrorists into their country? Who are not Azeris. So why is it that the Azerbaijan army doesn't have sufficient popular support to fight this war? Why did they have to bring in Syrians? And why did they have to bring in Syrian terrorists who've been just agents of Western powers to take down the Syrian government, which is very strongly supported in Syria. Otherwise, it would have fallen. It hasn't fallen, even after one of the most brutal civil wars in modern time in any country. So it doesn't add up. Even the leader of Azerbaijan must doubt the efficacy of his troops to fight or their willingness to fight to resort to that now. I could see if this war had gone on 10 years and both sides had used up all their resources, then I could see the Azerbaijani leader calling in foreign fighters, because he had no one else to do it. And that's usually the general progress of a war. But to call them in the first week, basically puts, at least in Western culture, the way we look at things, makes it look really bad, makes it look like there's no honest intention behind it. And it makes it look like you have no confidence in your own military forces. And well, since it's been 24 years since the last conflict, it could be that Azerbaijan doesn't have any well-trained troops, unlike the Armenians, who, being Christians and of a Western civilization, have a much higher level of military preparedness. So,
okay, Turk Troll, you're going to be blocked here. Okay. Got rid of that Turkish troll.
The Mideast, yeah. The Mideast is a place of a lot of conflict. I remember years ago when I was on the bus station of Cleveland, and a Jewish man came up to talk to me, a Hasidic Jew, and we talked a bit, and then he went on his way, got his bus. And then about 5 minutes later, up came a Syrian, and he was going to talk to me, and he said, was that Jew telling you anything about the Golan Heights? You know, the Golan Heights belong to us, and they're occupying them. And I said, no, that had nothing to do with it, but he felt that I had to hear his side of the story too. And I don't know why Turks are even intervening in this thing, because it's, you know, if you want to go back to the Ottoman Empire, I guess, if you're looking at that, but the modern Turkish state after the First World War disavowed any relationship with the Ottoman Empire and claimed to be an entirely new state representing the Turkish people. And on that legal basis, they have no claim to any of the former territories of the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
So on that basis, they should not be intervening in Azerbaijan. They have no legal basis to do that.
Now, to the Turkish troll who's probably still listening, he said all UN councils have said the lands belong to Azerbaijan. Well, this is the actual tweet I was looking for. UN high-level independent expert Alfredes saying the truth. Aliyev should be punished for many heavy crimes against Artsakh and Karabakh, the people of Artsakh. So the UN is saying the leader of Azerbaijan should be punished for war crimes. So,
but there's a deeper point here. The UN is not the world court. Any decision made in the UN is not necessarily even true. Okay, so this land has always belonged to Armenians. Armenians have always lived there. They were there thousands of years before the Azeris as a people even existed on the face of a map, or even by name, or even their language. So the claim that they don't own that land and they don't have the right to the land, that the Artsakh Republic doesn't have a right to exist, is just simply absurd principle. Christians have a right to liberty, and since ours is the true religion, our right to liberty precedes the right to liberty of everyone else. And God will shine on the Armenian people because he's their people and he will protect them. And in the last 24 years, it's not like the Armenians have been trying to start a war. They're just defending their own land and have held the borders firm, showing that they're not out to conquer Azerbaijan. They're not out to grab a corridor or resources or anything like that. They're helping their Armenian brothers in the Republic of Artsakh defend themselves.
During the meeting with the U.S. Ambassador Lynn Tracy, David Tonian stressed that the development of the situation at this rate will be catastrophic for the whole region. Again, the lady does not say anything.
Well, I don't see how it would be catastrophic for the whole region. It would be catastrophic for the Masonic plan for the whole region, because what's going to happen from this war is Russia and Iran are going to come out looking good. And that Turkey, Azerbaijan, Israel, and the US are going to come out looking bad. And this will be, you got to remember, the West, the Masonic nations of West have had an entire strategy since the first Gulf War to rewrite the map of the Mideast and put all the nations there under Masonic control. And they have pretty much the complete ascent of the Saudi dynasty and a lot of the Arab states in the Gulf. So that was no problem because they're probably already Masons. Well, those governments were set up by the British Empire in the post-colonial period, so they probably were Masons. But Iran and Syria stood in their way. And they tried their hand in Iran. It somewhat backfired because the government now is friendly to, in Iraq. They tried their hand in Iraq. It backfired a great deal, cost the US $1 trillion, but in the end, what is a Shia government that's friendly to Iran. And they tried to overthrow Syria, and that failed too, though it caused millions of refugees. But with the help of Russia, Syria has regained nearly all its territory. And then they got Turkey involved in Syria to try to push Syria some more, and that didn't really go anywhere. The Russians didn't have sufficient military power against the Syrians, who were well financed and backed by Russia. So now they're trying in Azerbaijan. This will be, I think, another an our task, and I think this will be another failure. And that's what the UN rep is really talking about. It will be the ultimate defeat of the Masonic nations plan for the Mideast, having defeated 3 times in a row. After that, there's nowhere else to go. It'd be a strikeout. So Russia needs to stand strong. Armenia needs to stand strong on this. And I hope in a way that Iran takes a more active role in helping Armenia defend itself. It will bring about a lot of goodwill for Iran among Christians around the world and show that they aren't the meanie, the meanie that they try to be depicted in all the Western press. So much of it is controlled by Jews. Iran is always painted as absolutely black, or as the big Satan of the Mideast. And people don't understand why, for example, Iran's always directed its foreign policy criticism towards Israel, because as a Shiite state, they don't believe it's morally lawful them to go to war with other Muslims, even if they be Sunni. And so they direct their attention to the only non-Muslim state in the Mideast, which is Israel. Maybe the rhetoric is a bit excessive. Well, they're run by clerics, and the clerics tend to preach sometimes in excessive ways to get a congregation to listen to them. But here in Armenia, the help they've already given to Armenia by transmitting Russian hardware across the border using Iranian roadways, highways, ports, and stuff is already a wonderful example to Christians everywhere that Iran is off sometimes. It's not the big bad meaning. It's here is defending the little guy against a coalition of countries that they're really rogue. Turkey's certainly rogue. It's attacked nearly all its neighbors except Bulgaria, and maybe even on the Bulgarian border, it sometimes attack the Bulgarians. And Azerbaijan, why does Azerbaijan want a worthless valley that's inhabited only by Christians? Is there any reason? No. Azerbaijan is rich in oil, rich in natural gas. If they play the good guy, they can market their products all around the world and become a very prosperous Western-style nation. They play the bad guy, people aren't going to want to buy their product anymore, and they're not going to want to send them any kind of military assistance, and they're going to get isolated. So it's really, I don't see how Azerbaijan has thought this through well, but I do think big oil has a lot to do with it. I think they're the one that pushed the dictator to do this. And now he's in a bad position. He didn't think it through.
Yeah. Well, that's all the news we have on Armenia and the fight going on.
I did want to speak about this Russian intervention thing. So the rumor that Russia was going to intervene I think was just a badly phrased tweet. Putin made it clear 4 days ago that Russia would not intervene in this. And I think he knows that to intervene in Armenia and risk conflict between Russian troops and NATO forces of Turkey would just not be the prudent thing to do. Okay, disengagement is a thing for Russia. And but there is an agreement between Armenia and Russia for mutual self-defense if Armenia is being attacked. That doesn't cover our task republic. So I think what the Armenian president was saying, that if Azerbaijan escalates the war and starts attacking Armenia proper, then Russia will honor their self-defense treaty and give them some kind of air support at least, because right now Azerbaijan and Turkey have air supremacy over Armenia, and that's not good for Armenia. It means that they'll have steady losses no matter what effort they try to mount against the Azerbaijan.
Yep. We have a comment from as for you 29. I don't think this person has English for the first language, so the person writes, that's it. Product is there, but aggression it initiates isolation.
Okay, well, I think he's basically agreeing with me that the aggression of Azerbaijan is going to just further isolate them to the West. And the best thing Azerbaijan could do is just end the strike right now and admit you make a mistake, and point out who pushed you to do it. Because I think it's big oil, the big oil companies. They want oil and natural gas pipelines that go from Azerbaijan down to Adana in Turkey on the Mediterranean coast, so they can ship that product around the world. Right now, there's only a natural gas pipeline that goes through Georgia, through Turkey, through Greece to Italy. It's pretty roundabout, very expensive. Companies usually like better marketing than that. I think that's who pushed the dictator of Azerbaijan to do this. And I think that's how they wrangled the support of the Pentagon too. I think it's big oil, because big oil pretty much runs Washington, D.C.
Yeah. If you have any questions or more comments on this, please feel free to share them and we'll read them out for you. I am impressed, once again, about 10 people so far, early in this early morning.
Okay, well, welcome to all of you.
So
I would like to point out that our order is trying to mount a humanitarian effort in Armenia. So if you come to ordo-militaris.us, right on the front page is a link called Help Armenia. And there's two ways of helping. You can make a contribution to our humanitarian effort there. And we're hoping to raise 100,000 that would use to help injured, wounded, and displaced civilians who are fleeing the Artsakh Republic and coming into the Armenian Republic and need a place to stay. And we're also trying to sell shares in to grow our order overseas, and we'd use the capital raise from that to build to found a security company in Armenia that we could use to run the activities our order provides to Christians who've been persecuted, and offer whatever things we legally could offer persecuted Christians in Armenia. So there's two ways you can help, and you go to ordo-militaris.us. We've gotten, I have to say, I'm very thankful. We've gotten 57 retweets and 68 likes on our tweet about this at our main Twitter account, Militaris Cat. But so far, we only had $145 of donations, which is kind of disproportionate. All you guys out there that are retweeting, I know there's 3 who made a donation, so 57 you retweeted, 68 you like. So that's not even 3%. The rest of you need to, tally up here. The Armenians merit our help. They are the allies of our forefathers, the Crusaders. The kings of Jerusalem, the first king of Jerusalem married an Armenian princess. Your ancestor Baldwin, he married an Armenian princess, the daughter of Thura. So the Armenian blood was in the royal house of Jerusalem. And so Armenians are not strangers to the Crusaders. They were blood allies. And that means now in their time of trouble, we should, in our association, think highly of coming to their help and doing what we can. Although we're only a small organization, we won't do great things, but at least we can do something small. And I think if we could raise 100,000, we could easily buy a property with a couple apartments in it and let Armenians who are refugees from one part of the country to another stay there until make it out through during the winter. And I think we could help a few families that way and show our moral support for Armenia in her time of trouble.
the link is in the chat, folks. Please go there and be generous and share it and everything. Well, I believe that is about it. Unless we have anything else we want to talk about.
Any other questions out there?
Going on the last
Now we're
call,
going to be
folks.
trying to do a program on the Armenian war.
Yeah.
We're going to try to do this program on Armenia, at least. And so Monday, at least Monday is twice a week. This week we will not do one on Wednesdays, but we might do one again on Friday or Saturday. Keep up on the war. Although AJ might do one on his own on Wednesdays, I'll be out. So But this is something we're definitely going to a lot of attention to, because this is a war between an Islamic country and a Christian country. Now, there's been people out there who, I don't know, they're sucked up some kind of strange philosophy, politics, and they're saying this is an ethnic war. It has nothing to do with religion, which is a way of saying that religion has nothing to do with ethnicity, or that each of these peoples are not religious and strongly influenced by the religions they profess, which is actually false. So the idea that this is not a religious war is merely Masonic propaganda to sideline religion and claim that religion is not important and that religion has no role in politics. And this is a grave Masonic error, and we Christians should reject it completely. I would say even Muslims should reject it completely, because it denigrates man and makes him something less than a religious being, and it denies there is a God and that these are motivations for men on earth. And this is not to say that every Armenian is a devout Christian and is fighting because he's a Christian, or that Azerbaijanis are fighting because they're Muslims. But the Armenian people are Christian people, and the Azeris of Azerbaijan are a religious people. They're Muslim people, though some of them are Jews. So, and this is not to deny there are people of different religions and small minorities in both countries, okay, whether there is or not, okay. But the Armenian people, their culture is wholly imbued by their Christianity, okay? And I'm sure the Azerbaijani people, their culture is wholly imbued also by their religion. And deny that this is this is a religious war, that religious motivations have nothing to do with it, is completely absurd. And it's really offensive to both people. It denigrates both the Armenians and the Azeris, and we shouldn't tolerate this opinion. And I would ask the members of the order not to fall into the error of thinking that, you know. Does this mean that everyone in the war is motivated by religious? No, this does not mean that, okay. But it doesn't deny the fact that the religions of both people heavily characterize how they're fighting the war, why they're fighting the war, and what they're fighting for, and the motivations and the spirit they have in battle and in the last moment of their lives. And to deny that these people are religious or have religious motivation is just a horrible, inhumane insult. It would move them down to the level of dogs. And that's what the Masons consider both Christians and Muslims dogs. And we have to understand that our real enemies here are the Freemasons, because the Freemasons are the ones that got the Azerbaijanis to start this war. These kind of ideas of territoriality are all Masonic. Never happened in the Middle Ages. One nation conquered another piece of territory, and Muslim rulers ruled over Christians, and Christian rulers ruled over Muslims, and no one had any problem with it because they were not taught racism and nationalism by godless materialists called Freemasons. They lived for higher things, and I do think other higher things were important.
Yeah.
They kept treaties and they honored them, and they were men of their word. So the real problem here are the Freemasons who started this war.
Yeah.
They're their real enemies.
So Azerbaijan and their leader, if you want to show you're totally different than how you're being shown in these news reports, and how you just wanting this little sliver of land back, and people are asking for peace and calm. Well, there is one Muslim leader that my uncle looked up to and was friends with, and he was friends with my uncle, Saladin. Imitate that guy.
And Saladin was a Kurd, so he was from that part of the world. But Saladin knew how to make a treaty and keep it. He knew that some things were just more important, and you know, peace was more important than disagreement. And it's hard now. It's going to be hard now for the dictator of Azerbaijan to back down and come to the peace table. He'll lose face. I guess he might look to blame it on someone, but blame it on the big oil who pushed you to this. Because if the war goes on, what's going to happen is your entire oil infrastructure is going to be destroyed. Your country will be impoverished. And if the Masonic Western nations who pushed you to do this don't get you to win the war, then they'll organize a rebellion against you and have you ousted and put someone far less honorable than you in power. claiming that the country's been liberated and the people are free of a dictator. And that's how they treat with the people, because if the Masons can't make you serve them, they're out to break you. That's the kind of evil, wicked things there are. And we know the Masons involved because they built a lodge in 2006 in Baku. So, and it came from Washington, D.C., the lodge.
Yep.
So they sold you their evil influence. And that's the problem. And to take good counselors. Seek the way of peace. That's the real thing. Because Azerbaijan is blessed so many times more than Armenia. They have really no reason to want to have a part of their country that's wholly Christian in their borders. They'll have a much better time to let that bit of land that's high in the mountains and has no value remain in Christian hands, as it has been for 2,000 years. So.
Yep. So tomorrow we'll be having our normal pre-recorded program on Christian politics, and we'll be covering how the Christian Party of America would be handling this COVID scamdemic, and how it would be different than how it's being done through the Democrats and Republicans.
Okay, and we'll do some practical information on how to organize the Christian Party in your town and see that it wins the next municipal election.
Yep. So I want to thank all of you for actually tuning in this early morning, and thank you for being active on Twitter and following us and joining us here. This is shocking and amazing. So thank you. This is Order Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.